Welcome to Business Startup for Boomers. This is the show that brings you inspiration and ideas to start your own boomer business. Here's your hosts, Larry Aarons and Jeff Williams.
Well, in this episode today, I think it may inspire a lot of you to get started in what's called an information-based business. And what is that? Well, we're about to tell you. Let me introduce my partner here, Jeff Williams, who is the chief coach at BizStarters. The website is bizstarters.com. And they're in the business of helping boomers just like you and me start their own business. And as you were just telling me, Jeff, before we started, information-based businesses on the internet are one of the fastest growing categories of money-making enterprises. And let's start with a definition. What is an information-based business?
Well, hi, Larry. Glad to talk about this because that's essentially what my company, BizStarters.com. You might start off by saying, well, wait a minute, with all this free information on the internet, all you have to do is go into Google and put a phrase in and all this stuff pops up. Why would anybody ever pay for information? Well, here's the reality. People do not have enough time to digest all the free information, and even if they did, not everybody has the discipline to work with the free information. And that's where information marketers come in. If you can sell coaching along with a book, or you can sell a webinar along with a book that shows the people, here's what you do, step 1, step 2, step 3, this is not something you can find as easily on the internet. You can find some basic information on the topic, but not the how-to, step by step. And there's a lot of people out there making $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 a year from putting the how-to in place.
Mm-hmm. So you provide expertise in a particular area. I'm talking about the entrepreneur, and you put it on the internet in easy steps and instruct people how to do whatever your expertise is, and people will pay for that. Okay, how do you get started in putting this together?
Well, the first thing is you have to define what your topic's going to be, and this should, just like we've said before, good ideas tend to come from something you already know how to do. The same thing with information business. In my case, I started 25 years ago as a marketing consultant. I really wasn't in the entrepreneurial training business. But a friend of mine asked me to come in and look at his small business and try to help him. He was having trouble financially with the business. And we were able to work together to boost his business. And I walked away and I realized from that assignment, which is essentially marketing, I had to figure out how to market his company better. I realized that even though this guy had an MBA, he didn't know a lot about running a small business. So light popped into my head, what if I wrote a course on how to start a small business, but from a real street smart perspective? Here's what you do, 1, 2, 3, 4, with no wasted time, no wasted effort. And that's how I got started in the business I'm in today, which is information business. We sell webinars, we sell books. So first of all, you got to decide what you really want to talk about. In my case, it was starting and growing a small business. So you have to figure out what it is. Is it gardening? Is it cooking? Is it a business topic like how to use search engine optimization? What's going to be your topic? And number 2, of course, you got to do a reality check and say, am I really good at this? I really know if I had to break down my topic into a process. In other words, here's 10 things you need to do to make my information work for you. Could you do the 10 steps? Because that's what you really sell. You can't just be good at something. You have to be able to sit down and say, here's the 10, 15, 20 steps necessary to make it happen.
Now, my experience with this and just watching information-based businesses, the more narrow the niche, the better you have an opportunity to sell information. Let's use your example of gardening. If you just sold info on gardening, that's too broad. But if you're an expert, let's say, on growing daylilies, and you put together a whole thing on how to grow great daylilies, there's a market for that out there.
Yeah, there absolutely is. And the neat thing about it is you can figure out how large a market is very quickly. Just go into Google and put in how many daylilies were sold in the United States last year.
Yeah.
And if you just Just figure out just a random number. Say each person buys 6 daylilies and divide it into the total. This tells you approximately how many people care about daylilies, and you're going to find out several million people, including my wife. So yeah.
So the narrower the niche, the better the information, and the more likely it is people will buy that information from you.
Yes, you start off narrow, because what happens is this. Once you've sold your narrow, specific process to somebody and they really loved it, they're going to come back to you and say, oh, now can you help me with this over here or this over here? For example, the lily gardener may say, can you help me with this other kind of plant? Well, you know something about that too. So the market will broaden your company over time, but you want to start narrow and then let the market take you broad.
I deal a lot in podcasts with my radio studio. Number one podcast in America and the world right now is, you'd never guess, it's about quilting.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's about quilting, and apparently there's a whole lot of people out there that care about quilting, enough so that this lady that does this quilting podcast makes 6 figures a year with information and doing this, and she's got major quilting suppliers sponsoring her and everything else. It's crazy, but it works.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so information-based business.
I know we don't have a lot more time here, so let me tell you a couple other things.
Yeah.
The first thing to do is to just sit down and write a paragraph about what you're going to specialize in, and then ask yourself the question you just asked, and that is this narrow enough, or am I trying to do too much at one time? If it's too broad, then try to narrow it down, and so you get one paragraph that says, I am going to help people do the following thing. You should be able to define that. Then you need to sit down, and this will take a number of weeks to do step 2, and that is you got to figure out the process. In my case, I figured out the business startup, it takes about 31 or 32 steps to do it right, to where you're really professionally, solidly in the market. And it took me quite a long time to define those and figure out how to do each of them. And then you have to decide, what form am I going to put this in? Well, chances are you're going to do it in a couple different forms. For example, I like to write, so I started off with workbooks, checklists, guides. That was how I got started, because I'm pretty good at writing. Other people are more into the the Audible thing, and they like to do either audio files like a podcast, or they'll do videos. And I was just shown yesterday a new app that you can download that allows you to create YouTube videos off your smartphone in less than 10 minutes.
Isn't that cool? Yeah, I love it.
So pretty interesting stuff. So then you got to decide what format, and then it could take you a month to do the format. I mean, you don't do this overnight. You got to sit down and decide. For example, my very first startup workbook was 165 pages long. It took me a long time to write that thing.
Yeah, I bet.
Because I had to have resources, and I had to have tips, and I had to double check it. I had to send it out to some other people and say, "Is this right? Am I understanding this right?" Mm. So you got to make sure that you're really credible, and don't be afraid to show it to other people who are smart and say, "Hey, am I getting this right?" Because what you don't want to have is to sell this product, and somebody gets 3/4 of the way through your course and says, "This isn't right."
Yeah.
You don't want to have that happen. So that's basically it.
Jeff, information-based business. If you want to find out more from Jeff, schedule a call with him by going through the BidStarters website. Thanks so much for the info today.
Great. Thanks, Larry.
This has been Business Startup for Boomers with your hosts, Larry Aarons and Jeff Williams, the show that brings you inspiration and ideas to start your own boomer business. See you next time.